Greetings, lovely people, and welcome to Fast Track Thoughts. And today we're going to be covering the final episode of Moon Knight Season 1, because I assume there's going to be more seasons after this. This one doesn't have a subtitle or anything, it's just episode 6. And I'll get into why I think that is, but in any case, spoilers ahead for that episode, the finale of Moon Knight, and just roll that intro.
Let's watch the rain as it's falling down.
So, first off, let me just say, this series as a whole, I'm going to get it out of the way right now, is really good. I wasn't a fan of the first 2 or 3 episodes, they were kind of to me. This series really picks up, and it's actually very quickly become something that I am really interested in. I'm really interested in seeing what we get from Moon Knight in the future, the various characters within it, within that world, and yeah, that's my, not review, because I'm not giving it a score, but I really like this series. If you're a fan of, especially, I'd actually push more towards the Netflix side of Marvel. If you're a fan of Daredevil, Punisher, I'd maybe even say Jessica Jones to some extent. If you like those series, and Defenders, obviously, you're probably going to like this. And, it's weird to say that about a Disney Plus Marvel show, because typically they fall more towards being like the movies. This doesn't feel like the movies, honestly, it feels like the Netflix shows. And, yeah, but that's my quick review sort of deal. Let's actually get into this episode. So, we start off, the cultists pull Mark's body from the water that he sunk into at the start the start of last episode, the end of the previous episode. And Harrow says whoever else might be in there when talking about Mark and Stephen. So, from the get-go, we have the setup of there's probably another person. We've already kind of known that Jake Lockley is there, and I'll get into that as we get deeper into the episode. But yeah, the fact that even Harrow's there's probably more personalities here, very interesting. And I'm going to use personality as the term for describing the different things. I know it's DID, dissociative, I can't remember, something disorder, identity disorder. It's dissociative identity disorder. But, yeah, I'm going to just use the word personalities to describe the different characters when I'm not referring to them by name. I'm just referring to them as a group, just to make that clear. I'm not trying to be, offensive or rude or anything like that. I know it's DID. I've got that deeply ingrained into my skull now. It's DID, not any of the other things I call it, but I'm still going to refer to them as personalities, so just clear that up. But yeah, with the power of Amit, I suppose, the Croc staff becomes an axe, which is really interesting. It also becomes way longer than it was, and that's just interesting. They leave, them being Harrow and his cultists, and Layla cries over Mark's death. And yeah, it's a bit of a touching scene, it's a bit of a sad scene, but it is what it is. Mark is then pushed back into the water by Layla. I don't think it's really a push, I think it's just that the way his body is, he just sinks back in. But it's just a very dumb moment of Mark just sinking back into the water. But Layla actually takes the scarab compass that was left on Mark's body and joins the cultists in a disguise that she actually knocked someone out earlier, so she stole their clothes. So we then are shown the cultists come up across some police blockade of some description, and the staff is now area of effect. So that's a video game terminology. I'm sure it's used in other things as well. It's also used in board games and stuff. But essentially what I mean by that is that rather than it requiring to be used directly to someone, with direct contact of some description, Harrow can now just tap it to the ground, and anyone that he decides in his general, area is, their scales are tested, which is terrifying. And he actually finds one of, all the police die, except for one. He's like, this is the face of a good man and stuff. It's such a weird scene. But yeah, honestly, it's a really interesting thing how that stuff has actually evolved by this episode. But I'm not going to go off on too many tangents this episode because there's a lot that happens. Taweret, the hippo goddess, talks through the dead to Layla, basically saying not to kill Harrow yet, and to free Khonshu and all that kind of stuff. So Taweret can just speak through the dead, apparently. I don't know if that's a thing that maybe they can all do. I don't know. But Taweret also says that, Layla can be her avatar, which is interesting. And it does end up happening, but I'll get more into that when I actually get to that point. The gods are aware of Harrow, breaking into their temple, essentially. They've brought all their avatars together, and they try to fight Harrow, but they're all killed. All the avatars. One of them survives long enough to give Layla some information later. I didn't spend the time to actually look which one it was, but it's the male that was in charge. Might be like, it's not Ares. I was gonna say Ares. It's definitely Ares. I can't remember, but it's. I think it does start with A though, so take that for what you will. But one of the gods does survive long enough to give Layla some information. But yeah, Amit is freed. Who would have thunk it? Who would have thunk that would actually happen? But yeah, with that, we find out that Harrow's scales are imbalanced, meaning that by his law, and by Amit's law by extension, he should die. And yeah, it's an interesting one, but yeah. Essentially, Amit just basically says, no, it's fine if you're going to be my avatar. If you're not going to be my avatar, then you die. Which, I mean, I don't know. It seems a bit weird to me, but it is what it is. Layla actually does go and free Khonshu after she gets information from the god that was not quite dead yet. But Layla refuses to be his avatar. Basically being like, no, if Mark's dead, which she's pretty sure that he can do something about it or something will happen to save Mark, he has to find someone else anyway. Like, it's fair enough. Layla doesn't want to be an avatar, though, as I say, does become one. But yeah, then we get thrown back into the Field of Reeds, and Taweret actually describes it as the peace Mark always wanted, which is kind of poetic, also kind of sad, because obviously he's always had, well, for a very long time at least, he's always had these voices in his head. And of course, that includes Stephen, who, in last episode, was turned to sand. And that's the issue. Stephen is, according to Taweret, just gone. Like, there's no way of getting him back. Mark doesn't want to abandon Stephen, though, so Stephen, basically leaves the Field of Reeds, which means that he can never go back. And essentially just goes, nah, I'm going to find Mark. I'm going to try and save him. If I can't, whatever, we die together. It's really sweet, actually. And Stephen has... Mark has this really nice speech when he finds Stephen, of how Stephen's hope kept Mark alive. Like, that hope was what actually kept him going. And, but regardless of that, Mark begins to turn to sand. And Stephen just kind of keeps on going about his lovely little speech, and basically says that Stephen is Mark's real superpower, which is really nice. It's a very sweet scene. I really did enjoy that. And then the gate opens. Osiris' gate, or whichever one it is, opens, and Stephen and Mark are free. They, go back to being human again, and they start running towards the gate. We then see, this is a bit of a tangent thing, but Khonshu versus Amit begins. Like, they start fighting within the temple. Khonshu is being absolutely destroyed by Amit, but anyway, Taweret then saves Mark and Stephen from a sandslide, or a sand tsunami, or whatever you want to call it. And then Khonshu realizes that Stephen, Mark, whatever, is alive again, goes over to him, turns him back into Moon Knight. Moon Knight is back, and when he speaks to Khonshu, we find out that they actually have the ability to just switch between them at will. They have full control over switching between Stephen and Mark, which is really cool, really nice. And it also leads to us finding out that Moon Knight can fly. Yeah, he can just fly. Like, Stephen doesn't show the ability to, but Mark just can straight up just take off and fly. It's a really interesting thing, but yep, I'm sure that'll be useful in the future. Layla does agree to become Taweret's avatar, and it's revealed that Layla's father arrived at the Field of Reeds, so Layla's father, we know, really cared about that kind of Egyptian mythology. Really nice to know that his, scales were balanced and everything, and he managed to get to the Field of Reeds. Really, really good. And Tara even was the one who took him through there, so that's a really nice little added bit of information. Amit's followers are just going around judging people, like just sending them all to hell, and Amit is just becoming bigger by eating souls, just like growing in size consistently by just consuming the souls of the damned, whatever you want to call it. We then see what Towerette's like superhero costume is, and Towerette describes it as fabulous. I wouldn't go that far. It's very cool though. It has like I don't know what kind of bird it is, but it has wings on it. There's blades, there's swords. Very interesting design. Really reminds me, weirdly enough, of the golden outfit from Wonder Woman 89. A film that I haven't seen, but I've seen enough of the pictures and stuff to know that it's a very similar design. I quite like it. Though I don't really like the Wonder Woman design, so it's kind of odd, but whatever. Mark and Steven are fighting Harrow, and they're able to like work together to do different things. At one point, Harrow like messes up Mark's flight, so they turn back into Steven, who then dives down because obviously he doesn't have the cape to create drag to gain speed going down, and then Mark is able to glide again. Mark is able to glide again. It's confusing going between the two. Mark is able to glide again thanks to the momentum, and yeah, they continue the fight. So it's really good. But it turns out that like Harrow, probably due to something with Amit, is just invulnerable. He just has an invulnerability. He's thrown through walls and crashed into the ground at high speed and stuff. It's what it is. And just as Moon Knight is about to be just murked by Harrow, Layla just flies in and saves Moon Knight from Harrow. Very cool. And then we have a very nice scene of Steven and Mark just talking to Layla for a little bit. And then Steven just goes like something to the effect of, "We have some new skill sets that we want to show off," sort of thing. And Layla's like, "That's cool. Do it." So Steven has billy clubs. It's such a Daredevil thing. I just really enjoyed watching it. I'm a huge fan of Daredevil in the MCU. But yeah, Steven has billy clubs. He throws them. He's able to like boomerang them around, and then Mark uses his moon daggers, which is pretty classic stuff. But also Harrow apparently has like super strength as well because he's able to throw Steven through a wall, just straight up through a wall. Pretty interesting. I just noted these things because I'm just like, it's worth noting. And Layla ends up saving like a teenager or a young adult, whatever, who asks if she's an Egyptian superhero, because obviously this is set in Cairo, to which Layla just says yes. And I can't remember the name of the character because it's not a character I'm overly familiar with, but I know that Layla's character is heavily based on an Egyptian super villain. So I assume it's probably going to be a case where she's going to be a gender swapped and good version of that character from the comics. As I don't know much about that, I've just read about it a little bit, and I have seen the comparisons and stuff about it. So, yeah, Harrow does actually just knock Moon Knight down, and is about to just completely just kill Moon Knight, just like take his soul for Amit. And then Mark blacks out, and Harrow is defeated with his axe staff almost through his head. Not enough to cause any damage, but like it's there. It's like on his skull. Which is insane, really. So that is the third personality. That is the other character, which I've already ruined it, is Jake Lockley. I'll get into that in the post-credit, though. Amit is captured in Harrow's body. That's something that whichever of the gods was kind of alive said could happen. Like, they could trap Amit in Harrow's human form, and that would mean you could actually kill both of them, which is very interesting. I don't know how that really works necessarily, but rather than putting her in a statue where she can be broken out, putting her in a human body apparently makes it permanent in some way. I don't know. But then Mark just refuses to kill Harrow. Straight up. He just refuses. Same with Steven, I assume. We don't talk to Steven. And Khonshu releases Mark and Steven. Steven wakes up in mental hospital that we saw before. Dr. Harrow's feet are bleeding, which obviously, if you remember from the first episode, he wears sandals with glass. And Mark and Steven just don't accept that as being reality. And Mark wakes in his bed. There's now two fish, so there's a Gus and someone and another fish in the fish tank. And Steven is still there. So, it's back to the status quo of the first episode. Even the same song plays from the first episode. But Mark and Steven are now living, like, coexisting, sort of thing. And I'm sure Layla's probably somewhere involved in the situation in some way. Hard to tell, really. I guess we'll find out in a future season or a future appearance of Moon Knight. But yeah, that brings us to the post-credit. And this is probably what I'll spend a little bit more time on, because it kind of sets up what the future Moon Knight's going to be. Harrow is in a mental hospital. But, like, he's actually in a mental hospital. Like, he's not, it's not like a mind palace or anything, you know, and it's not like with Stephen and Mark. No, Harrow is actually a patient in a mental hospital. And then a man in black takes Harrow out of the hospital in a wheelchair. He roughs him up a little bit, throws him into the back of a limousine, and Khonshu is in the car. Well, the limousine, whatever. And Khonshu has a nice little chat with Harrow, just about how, you know, Harrow underestimates Mark and all that kind of thing. And then says that Mark is far more messed up than even he realises, which leads to the reveal that the man in black that just took Harrow out of the hospital is Jake Lockley, who is still the avatar of Khonshu. Also, he's Spanish, I think, or Italian. It's hard to tell. Typically, Jake Lockley is a New Yorker. Like, is that. So he might be like Italian-American, maybe. I'm not completely sure. But I'm pretty sure he's speaking Spanish in this, which is different and a bit weird. I don't know why they've done that, necessarily. But whatever. It might just be that he just happened to be speaking Spanish, but it just seemed like a really weird detail. That he's just speaking Spanish, but whatever. And Jake shoots Harrow dead with a silenced pistol. Multiple shots as well, not just one like shot that could be misconstrued. No, multiple shots are fired. This is not a Kingpin situation. Harrow is dead. But yeah, this finally answers the question of, are there actually more personalities than just Stephen and Mark? There's at least Jake Lockley. And typically in the comics, that's it. There's just those three. I think there have been times where there have been more. But typically it's, you know, Mark, Stephen, and Jake. That's the trifecta. It's really interesting that it took this long for us to properly see him. Like, some have argued that the bandage-nosed Mark that we see in the mental hospital is probably actually Jake. A lot of people are thinking that, and I tend to agree. The fact that he speaks Spanish in this post-credit makes me not so sure, but I mean, it doesn't really matter. They were trying to hide the fact he was a different personality anyway, so maybe, I guess, we were just hearing him in English even though he was actually speaking Spanish, who knows. And at the end of the day, it's like, Mark is English speaking, you know, he's American, and Stephen, his, like, first personality that he created is British English, so it'd be weird if his first personality was straight up just Spanish or Italian or Mexican or whatever, Portuguese, I don't know, whatever language it was they were speaking. I'm pretty sure it was Spanish, but my Spanish is also pretty bad and my Italian is even worse, so it could definitely be the case that it was actually Italian or anything, which, if it's Italian, I'm completely, like, understanding of that, of, like, yeah, they wanted to distinguish him even more, and he can still be a New York, like, character, you know, he can have a New York accent most of the time when he's actually speaking English. But yeah, it's weird that it took until the post-credit for us to actually see him. Like, especially when we know of two things that he did, because Jake took over to kill those people in Cairo, and then also took over to kill all the people shooting, as well as nearly kill Harrow in this episode. So it's like, that's two things we know for a fact happened with Jake. Jake was also in the sarcophagus. How did Jake escape the underworld, you know? Like, how did he get out of there? I do have to wonder about that. Like, how did that work? And was Jake the one with the bandage on his nose? It's a really interesting thing. I am really hoping that when we eventually see Jake's Moon Knight, like, costume, I hope it's hyper simplified, but it looks like I can't remember which comic run it is. One of the comic runs, he has, like, a bag mask with a moon on it. That's, instead of having the hood and stuff, he has, like, just like a pillowcase over his head. I really hope that we see that sort of look for Jake as like this vicious, like, not all there, not quite right sort of personality. I would really enjoy that. But yeah, that is really everything I wanted to go over. I really enjoyed this finale. I think this is one of the stronger finales we've had on Disney Plus. There's been a few series, not naming names, but there's been a few series from Marvel on Disney Plus that I've kind of gone, it was fine when it came to the ends. This one didn't disappoint, and I think it probably helps that I didn't feel that connected at the start, and they were able to build on me. But yeah, it honestly may be one of my favorite Disney Plus shows. Like, just generally, it's not up there with like Mandalorian and the final season of the Clone Wars and stuff, and of course WandaVision's excellent, Loki's excellent. Like, there's a lot of good stuff on Disney Plus. I'm happy to say Moon Knight is up there, and at the very least, I can easily say, it reminds me so much, as I keep saying, of Daredevil, which is my favorite Marvel show. Like, regardless of anything else, Daredevil, Netflix's Daredevil, even though I watched it on Disney Plus, I only watched it recently, so it might be recency bias, but I love Daredevil in the MCU. I hope they actually gets a movie or another show or something, but that's beside the point. Moon Knight really reminded me of Daredevil, and I think, the more I got into this series, the more I'm just like, this sounds really reductive, but I'm very much like, this'll do until we get Daredevil. Like, I'm happy to continue having Moon Knight until we get Daredevil. That's a dumb way of putting it, but like, yeah, I'm really happy with how this series went. And like, hopefully, season 2, when that happens, hopefully that'll be good. I'm really looking forward to seeing where this goes. I really want to see Moon Knight actually appear in another show, like a film. I don't know what he would appear in realistically, because he doesn't really have that many connections. He hangs around with Spider-Man, I guess, but like, that's a bit complicated to do, especially now with Far From Home, with No Way Home, sorry. But like, yeah, Moon Knight. I'm really excited to see where it goes in the future. Hopefully it's good. Hopefully, like, we can see him team up with Daredevil. We can see him team up potentially even with Punisher if they bring him back. I'd kind of like to see how he interacts with Deadpool, weirdly enough. I think that'd be a weird dynamic, but I think that'd be really interesting. Just generally, like, I think, especially with, this is such a tangent. I'm going to say, if you enjoyed this review, this thoughts video, whatever, make sure to like it, subscribe if you're new to it, and ring that bell. But I am just going to ramble on for a little bit about something. How weird would it be if you paired up Moon Knight, this specific Moon Knight, with Deadpool, and then had Deadpool reference other characters that, why have I blanked on his name? Poe Dameron. Yeah. The guy that plays Steven. Other characters that his actor has made. Because, like, imagine, I wouldn't exactly call it comedy, I just think that would be a really interesting dynamic of, like, Deadpool just continually just calls him these names that, like, only make sense to someone that has fourth wall breaking abilities, like Deadpool. I keep nearly saying Daredevil. It'd be really interesting. I think that dynamic would be really cool to see. But yeah, with that little ramble out of the way, I hope you enjoyed. I've said it already, but thanks for watching. And I guess the next thing you'll see in this series will be Obi-Wan. I don't even know when that comes out. It might be out today. It's May the 4th. So, it might be out now and I just don't know, but in any case, Obi-Wan will be the next thing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!
It's been a long week. I feel like I could use a vacation.